I happily announced to my family the day of my graduation. I hoped they would come. But my mother said, "I'm busy, just take the bus, okay?" A wave of quiet sadness passed through my body, and when I opened my phone and saw my mother's post, "So proud of Amber, my girl," with a photo of my sister standing next to a brand new Tesla. That was the moment I realized I was invisible in my own family. But just as I stepped onto the bus, an unexpected man appeared, and he changed my life forever. But before we continue with this story, where are you watching from? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, so I can tell you the whole truth. My name is Brooke Mitchell, 22 years old, a computer science graduate fresh out of MIT. But if you think I grew up in a proud and supportive family, I didn't. I was born in a small town called Glasgow, Montana, where winters are long and bias colder than the snow. My mother, Susan, a devoted nurse, always believed that a stable job, insurance, and shift hours were the only valid measures of a person's worth. And my sister Amber fit that ideal perfectly. A talented, beautiful nurse who made our mother beam with pride. I was different. I loved technology, startups, the thrill of creating something from scratch. But to my mother, my passion was nothing more than pointless computer games. I never hated Amber. In fact, I once deeply admired her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was always a defective copy. A post-divorce child bearing the face and personality too much like my father, the man my mother would never forgive. My grandmother Eleanor once whispered to me on a rainy night, "You're like your father, smart, daring, unwilling to follow the beaten path, and that hurts your mother because it reminds her of what she lost." I understood. But understanding doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Birthdays with no cake, empty greetings, cheap gifts like plastic combs or old socks, while Amber got parties with friends, designer bags, even a brand new MacBook when she got into college. I wasn't jealous, I just wanted to be seen. But in that house, I was often just a shadow. I threw myself into school, side jobs, hunted for scholarships just to leave that town, not to run away, but to prove I could be something, without anyone's approval. In my weakest moments, I texted my dad, David, who rarely called but always replied with the same familiar words, "I'm proud of you. Never think you're not enough." I held on to those words like a quiet prayer every time I felt unloved. Then came the day of my MIT graduation, a milestone. I hoped someone from my family would show up, a hug, a look of pride. But I was wrong. No one came. And when I saw my mother's Facebook post, captioned, "Proud of Amber, my girl," with a photo of her beside a brand new Tesla in a luxury showroom, my heart shattered. That was the day I realized, if I didn't stand up for myself, no one would do it for me. And I didn't know. That day, someone unexpected would appear and change my life forever. I sat alone on a stone bench near the bus stop, dressed in my black graduation gown, already wrinkled from the early summer heat. In my hands was the thesis I had successfully defended, and in my heart, a void no one could fill. I thought I had gotten used to it, being overlooked, dismissed. But today, the day I officially graduated from MIT with an almost perfect GPA, the day I became the first in my family to step into the world of tech, I still dreamed that someone would show up and say, "You did great." But only the bus's hiss answered, and a few unfamiliar eyes passed by. I lowered my head, swallowed back tears, when a deep, warm voice came from behind. "Is there still a spot for a dad who's late?" I looked up. It was him. My dad, David Mitchell, in a slightly crumpled gray suit, graying hair, and that same smile I remembered from childhood. I stood up, heart pounding, surprised and flustered. "Dad, how did you know today was my graduation?" He raised his phone and smiled lightly. "You know you basically write a global diary online, right?" And I suddenly remembered posting a vague tweet days ago, now on X, with a blurry photo of my diploma. He stepped forward and hugged me tightly, saying nothing more. And when he pulled away, he held a small box in his hand. "For you," he said. I opened it. Car keys. A brand new Bentley parked a few steps away. I was speechless. I know I can't make up for the past, but I want you to know. I've always believed you deserve good things. I burst into tears, not because of the car, but because for the first time in my life, I felt seen. As myself. That evening, Dad and I had dinner at a small restaurant near campus. Under soft yellow lights and light jazz music, he told me about the years after the divorce, living alone in Austin, trying and failing with a restaurant, losing everything with dropshipping, mocked as a middle-aged man refusing to get a real job. But he didn't give up. Then, 5 years ago, a wild idea about autonomous vehicle tech struck him, and with 2 old college friends, they raised $50 million 6 months ago. Now his company is valued over $1.5 billion, headquartered in Austin, and about to expand into traffic data analytics. He looked at me. "I see the same fire in your eyes I had when sketching those first designs. Want to come to Austin with me? Not for me, but because you deserve to be in a place where your talent is recognized." I didn't answer right away, but for the first time in years, I felt something new. The chance to be myself, not someone else's shadow. 2 days after graduation, I returned home, not seeking an apology, but to confront. Mom called that afternoon, hesitantly asking, "I'm cooking tonight, want to come over?" "Amber will be there too." I agreed. Not because I believed anything would change, but because I needed to finally say all I had bottled up for 22 years. Dinner began with dull conversations. Amber got promoted, Mom was thinking about an investment property, and a new neighbor had moved in. I sat there, hands clenched around my glass, listening as if to music not meant for me. Then I set my utensils down and said, calmly, "I want to ask, does anyone remember what day yesterday was?" Mom looked up, a bit unsure. Sunday?" I gave a faint smile. "It was the day I graduated from MIT." Silence. I looked straight at Mom. I don't need applause, but at the very least, I thought I deserved someone in the family to show up, or at least a congratulations. She leaned back slightly, her eyes uncertain. "Brooke, you know, I had to work a night shift, and Amber just got promoted. I cut in. You always have a reason. When I was 6, you forgot my birthday for the first time. At 9, I shared a party with Amber, but the cake only had her picture. At 14, I won first place in science, and you said, 'That's good, but you should focus on more useful subjects.' At 18, I got a full scholarship, and you asked, 'What job do you even get with computer science?' I'm not blaming anymore, but I need to say this, even if it's late. You've never seen me, never heard me, only saw the shadow of my father in me and hated it." The air thickened. Mom said nothing, but suddenly Amber spoke, gently. "You're right." I turned to her, stunned. Amber didn't look at me. She stared into her glass. "I was always the loved one, that's true, but the cost was that I had to become who Mom wanted, not who I really was." I was silent. Amber looked up, eyes slightly red. "I don't like nursing. I love painting, but I hid my sketches in the drawer since 6th grade, because I was afraid Mom would say I was being dreamy. Every time I saw you doing what you loved, I was jealous and in awe." Those words broke the anger in me, like a soft touch shattering a shell. In that moment, I realized I wasn't the only one suffocating in this house. I looked at Mom. She lowered her head, exhaled softly. I didn't know it was like this. I thought, if a child resembled their father too much, I had to force them down another path. I was wrong. It wasn't a full apology, But it was the first time she admitted something needed to be re-examined. And that, to me, was the beginning of truth. That night, after a dinner thick with silence and confrontation, I was about to leave the house without looking back. But as my hand touched the doorknob, Amber called softly, "Brooke, can you stay a bit?" I turned. The warm light in the living room cast our shadows long across the wooden floor. I said nothing, just nodded. We sat on the sofa, not facing each other, but side by side. No one started with an apology, but sometimes the truest words need no preface. Amber spoke first. "You know, when I was in 8th grade, I once painted a winter seascape. It won a school prize. But Mom said nothing, just took it, shoved it into a drawer, and said, 'Pretty, but you should focus on biology if you want to be useful.'" I turned to her for the first time, seeing her without my guard up. Amber continued, voice softening. "I hate needles, but Mom wanted me to be a nurse because it's a safe job." So I stayed silent. For 10 years. She pulled out her phone, opened her photo gallery. Dozens of paintings appeared. Portraits, still lifes, abstract landscapes. One showed me sitting by a window, hair messy, eyes deep in thought. I choked. Amber smiled sadly. "I painted you more often than I ever spoke to you." I buried my head in my hands. For the first time, I saw a different Amber. Not the perfect, favored sister, but a woman also pressed, also afraid to live true. I whispered, "I thought you were the loved one, and I was the forgotten. I didn't know we were both victims of expectation." Amber nodded. "Maybe. We don't have to be like Mom. Or like anyone. Do you know what you'll do next?" I looked at the bracelet on my wrist, the only gift Dad gave me when I turned 16. "Dad wants me to come to Austin and work with him. I think I'll go." Amber smiled, truly for the first time. "Good. Be yourself. And I'll paint again. This time, no hiding." We sat there for a long time. No hugs, no tears. But something quietly shifted. As if, after all the years of misunderstanding and jealousy, we were finally peeling away the layers to rebuild something from the start. With truth. I left Glasgow on an early morning when the sun had yet to shine across the cold, gray rooftops. No one saw me off. Only Grandma Eleanor hugged me tightly at the door and handed me a small envelope. "Don't open it now. Wait until you truly need it." I nodded, tucked it into my bag, and got into the Bentley my father had given me. In the rearview mirror, the old house gradually faded away, like a memory I no longer wished to preserve intact. The road to Austin was long, but I didn't feel tired. For the first time in my life, I felt I wasn't just someone leaving, but someone beginning. When I arrived at the headquarters of my father's company, a sleek glass building in South Austin's tech district, I wasn't greeted with a red carpet. No one knew I was the CEO's daughter. I was assigned an internship in product development, along with 7 other students, working in a research group applying AI to autonomous mapping. I didn't object. In fact, I felt relieved. Here, I wasn't the unloved child or Amber's little sister. I was just Brooke, someone good at writing code, solving problems, and genuinely passionate about technology. My father didn't interfere in my work. He only sent one text the night I arrived. "Walking on your own will help you see how strong you really are. I'm always here if you need me, but I know you won't." I saved that message, the same way I once saved his old texts. Austin was nothing like Montana. It was sunny, vibrant, pulsing with the energy of people trying to create something great. I rented a small apartment near campus, started living independently with simple meals and a packed schedule. But I was happy, because every line of code I wrote, every meeting I joined, every argument I dared to raise, all proved I didn't need anyone's approval to be myself. And during those tiring yet inspiring days, Amber sent me a photo, her first oil painting in 10 years. She wrote, "Thank you for helping me step out of the invisible box I used to call stability." I looked at the painting, a door opening to a vast blue sky. I didn't reply immediately. I just smiled, knowing, for the first time, we weren't just sisters on paper. We were truly seeing each other. A week after I started my new job in Austin, Mom sent a message to the family group chat. "The Tesla Model Y has arrived. Pearl white. Amber, don't forget to post a photo so I can save it as a keepsake." I looked at the message, then back at the code on my laptop. Not long after, Amber messaged me privately. "Are you free? I need to talk." We video called. Amber was in her living room with oil paint boxes and half-finished canvases propped on easels behind her. Her eyes were ringed with fatigue, but lit with something I had never seen in her: freedom. I called Mom, told her, "I'm not accepting the car." I froze. "What did you say?" Amber sighed. "I said thank you, but I don't want that Tesla. Not because it's not beautiful, but because it carries Mom's expectations, not mine. Every time I drive it, I'd be reminded that I'm living someone else's life." Of course, Mom wasn't pleased. She called me that night, her voice a few degrees colder. "What did you say to your sister?" Amber's never refused a gift from me. I didn't defend myself. I only said, "I think Amber has grown up, and she's finally living true to herself." Mom was silent. For the first time, she didn't argue, nor agree. She just exhaled and hung up. A few days later, Amber moved out of the apartment Mom had bought for her when she started nursing, into a small studio near downtown. She paid rent herself, sold off some old things, and hung her first painting in a local gallery. Not a major exhibition, but it was real. I visited her that weekend. The apartment was small but bright, smelling of fresh paint and coffee. Amber proudly showed me her recently sold painting, a girl standing in a field of purple flowers, face turned skyward, holding a palette. I asked, "Who did you paint?" Amber looked at me, smiled. "I painted you. But this time, the way I truly see you." I said nothing, just quietly stepped forward and hugged her. We, at last, had found each other. No longer standing at opposite ends of favoritism, no more envy or straining to please Mom. We were, step by step, repainting ourselves, in our own way. One weekday morning, as I brewed coffee in my small Austin kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I hesitated before picking up. It had been nearly a month since the last call, since Amber refused the Tesla and moved out. "How are you?" Her voice came through, tired and slow. I nodded, though she couldn't see. "I'm okay. Just submitted a demo of the machine learning mapping system to the research team." She paused a beat, then said, "I didn't know Amber would be so resolute." I thought, gifts always made her happy. I didn't answer right away. Mom continued. "Back then, when your father left, I thought stability was everything. Career, finances, a roof over our heads. I thought that was enough. I forgot that emotions are part of a family too." I asked softly, "What do you think about me now?" For the first time, she didn't dodge. "You do resemble your father a lot, but maybe that's not a bad thing. It's just, I didn't know how to love someone who wasn't like me." She didn't apologize, but I heard the truth in her voice. A truth never admitted before, now slowly, clumsily, but sincerely revealed. That afternoon I reopened my bag and found the envelope Grandma had given me when I left home. The handwriting was soft and slanted. "To Brooke, when you feel lost." Inside was a handwritten letter and an embroidered handkerchief. The letter was brief, but it stopped me cold. "Dearest Brooke, you are the last link between your father's past and your own future. If it hurts, it means you still have a heart capable of love and forgiveness, and that will carry you farther than any car or scholarship ever could." Grandma Eleanor had always been the quiet one in the middle, saying little, but seeing more clearly than anyone. I held the handkerchief, stitched with a blooming flower, and understood. Her generation had grasped something ours had yet to learn. Love doesn't come from control, but from acceptance. That night, I texted Amber. I think we're cleaning up the wreckage left behind, but this time, we won't build with old bricks. She replied, I'll paint something new, for the two of us. A month after that conversation, Amber sent me a photo. It was of a white wall corner where a large oil painting was hung. The painting was titled Silent Roots. It showed two little girls standing back to back in a nameless field, each looking in opposite directions. But underground, the roots from their feet intertwined tightly, as if, no matter where they looked, they could never truly be separated. I didn't need to ask. One girl was her, the other was me. Amber included a note. Next week, I'll hang this at the group exhibition in Portland. Theme: Rebirth. I flew in that Friday afternoon, stood silently in the bright gallery as visitors paused before her painting. No one knew who we were. No one knew behind that frame were decades of silence, misunderstandings, and layered pain. They only saw the image. And someone bought it. An older couple. The husband said, "We have 2 daughters. And this speaks exactly to what they went through." They placed a deposit that night. Not a huge sum, but it was the first time Amber got paid for something she truly loved. After the exhibition, we went to a small bar on the corner. Amber lifted her mocktail, smiling gently. You know, I used to think success was mom's praise. Now I feel success is when strangers can feel your truth, without explanation. I asked, "Do you want mom to know about this?" Amber shook her head. Not yet. I want to keep a small part, just for myself, like proof that I stood up on my own, without needing applause. I understood, because I'd once felt the same. In that moment, I no longer held much resentment toward Mom. Instead, something else settled in, as if I was stepping out of the shadow of the past, and with my sister, laying the first bricks for something called a true family. Not a family on paper, but one rebuilt from understanding, and sometimes from quiet, loving silence. I returned to Austin on a Monday morning, the early autumn air perfect for a walk, trees already blushing light orange, and the air carrying a strange scent, the scent of change. 6 months after my first day at my father's company, I was promoted to product coordinator. Not because I was the CEO's daughter, but because the research team used the algorithm I wrote to resolve map errors in low-light environments, an issue that had sparked 3 months of debate with no solution. The CTO called me into a private meeting room, patted my shoulder. "We need people like you, not only for capability, but because you're unafraid to question old assumptions." I walked out of his office that afternoon with an official contract and a feeling I'd never experienced back home. Trust not born of blood, but of self. That night, I strolled alone around the lake near my apartment. The wind was cold, but gentle. I sat on a wooden bench, opened my phone, and sent a message to Amber. "I've been promoted, and this time it's not because of who we know." She replied almost immediately, "You deserve it. Every line of your code is a stroke of art. I'm certain of it." I laughed softly, then checked my inbox. There was an unread email from Mom. The subject line, only 2 words, "Dear Brooke." In it, she wrote that she had just quit her job due to health reasons and was learning how to live alone. She confessed, "When you and Amber left, I felt abandoned. But I also realized I'd closed my own heart long ago. If you can't forgive me yet, I understand. But if one day you want to visit, I will be here. No expectations, no pressure." I read that letter many times that night. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat quietly. Because I knew not all wounds can be healed by an apology, but some doors, if opened sincerely, can let people take a step closer. Just one small step, but a real one. I took my phone, typed a few lines, then deleted them. Finally, I just wrote, "I'm okay, and I hope you are too." Sent. Nothing more. That was my way of drawing boundaries, and also keeping a part of empathetic humanity. Because growing up isn't about winning, it's about no longer needing to prove your worth, and still living well. A few weeks later, my father called me up to the company rooftop on a Friday afternoon. No grand presentation, no secretary in tow. Just the two of us standing under slanted golden sunlight, iced coffee melting slowly in hand. He opened his laptop and showed me a simulation model. "I'm considering a new product branch, analyzing the mobility habits of elderly people to optimize the autonomous vehicle system for that demographic, not just to make their travel safer, but to preserve their independence. But I need someone to lead the research team." I didn't understand immediately. "And you thought of me?" He nodded. "Not because you're my daughter, but because in the current team, only you proposed building a gesture recognition system with physiological feedback to improve responsiveness. And above all, you view the problem not only as an engineer, but as someone who grew up amid indifference." I was speechless for a few seconds. That remark, my father acknowledging me not just for technical skill, but for emotional depth, was a first. I accepted. The project was named Brook Sense, his idea. I was shy about it, but he said, "You have the right to put your name on what you build from the heart." Over the next 3 months, I worked tirelessly, coding, testing, interviewing elderly users, writing reports, presenting to internal investors. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just someone who could solve a problem, I was someone who told the story behind the technology. During the final pitch, I ended with, "Sometimes the oldest among us need to be listened to like a child, and technology can do that if programmed with empathy." The room fell silent for a few moments before applause. My father sat in the back row, not smiling broadly, not standing, but simply nodded, a gesture of recognition. And I knew in that moment, I was no longer David Mitchell's daughter. I was Brooke Mitchell, and that name, at last, held its own value. One autumn evening in October, when Austin began to chill, I received a courier package from Oregon. The sender was amber. Inside was a painting carefully rolled in brown tissue, along with a small handwritten card. "Not everyone born of the same blood is family. But you chose me, and I'm grateful for that." I unrolled the painting on my desk and stood still. It was titled Chosen Sister, abstract, yet strangely vivid. In it, two women stand with their backs to the world yet holding hands in an undefined, colorless space. One wears a white dress, long hair loose, that was Amber. The other wears a gray hoodie, headphones on, holding a laptop. It wasn't emitting light from its screen, but from her palms. I knew that was me, and the glow was the only thing illuminating the surrounding void. I sat quiet for a long time. Not because the painting was beautiful, but because, for the first time, I saw myself not as father's likeness, broken, or outsider, but as a source of light, an independent being, carrying value, capable of illuminating something in the world. I hung the painting in my office at the company. No note, no explanation. But anyone who entered paused, gazed at it. Someone asked, "Who painted this?" I just smiled. A sister I once thought I could never love. They didn't ask more, because sometimes the most important things don't need explanation. They just need to exist. Amber didn't call often, but every month she sent me one message. "I'm still painting, and I'm still missing you." I didn't need more than that. We once grew up competing for survival in the same house, but now we walk side by side on paths we chose ourselves, no one sacrificing themselves to please another. And that painting was the final testament of that. One Sunday morning near year's end, I found a cream-colored envelope in my mailbox. No logo, no postal stamp, only my name, Brooke Mitchell, written in that slender, steady handwriting I could not mistake. From Mom. I held it for a long time before opening it. Not because I feared its contents, but because I knew this would be the final chapter of a relationship I had learned to view through truth, not expectation. The letter was less than a page. She wrote, "Brooke, I'm not sure I ever did anything right. But if there's one thing I want to say most, it's this. I've learned how to love you. Belatedly. Not because you were talented, obedient, or successful, but simply because you are my child. I'm sorry it took me so many years to understand that." I read it, then placed it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel bitterness. Only a deep quiet, like someone closing the final door in an old house. Not to erase it, but to stop being trapped inside. I didn't call back. I didn't write a reply. I simply found a small wooden frame, pressed the letter into it, and placed it on my bookshelf, beside the photo of Amber and me at our first exhibition. I kept it as a milestone, as a belated greeting from a mother who didn't know how to love, but at least learned how to let go of control. A month later, I returned to Montana once, though not to the old house, but to visit the nursing home where Grandma Eleanor had moved. We sat together, watching snow fall through a misty window. She took my hand, softly asked, "Are you okay?" I looked at her, smiled gently. "Better than ever." And in that moment, I knew I no longer needed recognition from those who never saw me. Because I had seen myself, clearly, fully, and without needing anyone's permission to exist as I am. Those who needed to stay in my life remained. Those who needed to let go left quietly. And I didn't resent them anymore. I only felt gratitude, for everything that happened finally led me to where I belonged. That afternoon, I drove the Bentley away from the office after a long but gratifying meeting. Austin's winter light had that strange glow, both golden and cool, as if the sky itself was quietly transforming. I played my favorite instrumental track, windows down so the breeze brushed through my hair. The car glided through tree-lined streets I once traveled as an outsider. Now I felt I truly belonged. I thought of Amber, the sister I once envied, once distant, now an inseparable part of this new life. I thought of Mom, the woman who once hurt me, who trapped us in a cage of expectations, but who eventually stopped, late but genuinely. I thought of Dad, the man who left to rediscover himself, then returned, not to give me money or status, but an opportunity to walk my own path. And I thought of myself, the 22-year-old girl who silently boarded the bus on graduation day, who wrote code in dorm rooms to prove she mattered, who believed she had to work twice as hard just to earn half as much recognition. Now, I no longer needed permission to exist. I am myself. No proof required, no apology needed. The car turned onto the highway, sunset golden across the dashboard. In that moment, I didn't feel lonely. I felt freedom, and I knew my journey wasn't over, but finally, I had driven away from the old shadow, and I was headed toward my own horizon, radiant, serene, and full of worth.